to another I Love Data Fridays here at the International Data Evaluation Center on the campuses of the Ohio State University. All right, let me turn some of this music down here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, first I want to say welcome to here another I Love Data Fridays, like I said, here at the International Data Evaluation Center. Switching up the theme songs this week since it's the holidays. Thought we'd do a little Auld Lang Syne there and welcome the new, bring in the new year. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for attending I Love Data Fridays. As you can see on the screen here, we've got a few things that we're going to talk about today. One being that we're going to take a look at how to make that multi-year OS total score growth chart, the one we did last month, but this year, or this month, we're going to do it in Excel 2010 and Google Sheets. So how we do it in both of those is different from what I showed in my last video. So I'm going to show you how to do it here. And then we're going to take an exploratory look at some outcomes by i3 Schema of Implementation. So you might remember back from the i3 report, they have these different schema of implementations of trying to explain why we have our variance in our school. So over the summer, we took a look at that. So, hey, well, let's get into it. Who's talking to you, Data? Well, you've got me, Jeff Breimer-Bashore, Director of IT and Operations here at the International Data Evaluation Center. And ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to be talking some data to you today. And like I said, I've already, look at that, I already went over what we're going to be talking about today. As I said, our topics today, we're going to talk about how to make that OS total score, multi-year OS total score chart that compares multiple years and multiple students. And we're going to look at it in Excel, how to do it in Excel 2010 and Google Sheets. And then, like I said, we are going to take an exploratory look at some outcomes by the i3 Schema of Implementation. Now, I know I have them listed in this specific order on the screen, but I'm actually going to go slightly backwards. I'm going to start with this bottom bullet first, and then we'll jump back up and talk about our Excel stuff here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize. Have a bit of a cold this week and a little bit of a sinus infection, and so if I mute the audio, that's because I'm possibly hacking up a lung or something. So just bear with me, and we'll get through it together. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time to talk a little data. I Love Data Friday! All right, so let's get into it first. So like I said, we're going to take an exploratory look at some outcomes by i3 Schema of Implementation. And you're probably like, Jeff, I have no idea what you're trying to talk about there. So let's just do some quick review, and I'll explain what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. So some of you might remember back in our i3, the final i3 report that was done by the University of Pennsylvania in Chapter 6, starting on page 117, they talk about different schema of implementations of to try to help explain why we see some variance in reading recovery. So in that study, they went out and interviewed teachers at the school, and they came up for possible reasons why they think there is this variance in reading recovery. And so we can see that down the left-hand side here, these are the 7 sort of reasons why they think they find the variance in reading recovery. And then depending on how schools fall into these different categories right here, they then place the schools into what they call different schemas of implementation. So starting all the way over on the left here, you have this isolation schema of implementation where reading recovery is its own island, sort of operating by itself and not really integrated into the school. And going over here to where you have this integration schema where reading recovery, is a part and enhances what we do. Where reading recovery is this kind of critical tool and is just one tool though that the school has, and it's integrated fully into how the school works or how they do stuff at their school. So but what this report doesn't have is it doesn't show any outcomes sort of by schema of implementation. I think we all know sort of through our work with reading recovery and work with kids and work with schools, that, you know, reading recovery is at its strongest when it's over here in this integrated category. That, you know, when it is a part of a much bigger school, you know, school implementation, or is a part of a, you know, a very thorough school implementation where there's a lot of support going on for kids, you know, that is where reading recovery really shines. And so I wanted to see, do sort of our gut feelings hold true on that. What does the data have to say? So as the arrow is pointing out here, as we move from left to right across the chart, reading recovery moves from being less integrated to more integrated in their schools. So this summer, to help do that, I recruited some teacher leaders to help me. So some of you who are watching this video may remember I stopped you at the Teacher Leader Institute and asked you to complete an Excel file. This is what I'm showing up here, just an example of the Excel file I gave to teacher leaders. The blurry spot is the names of schools. We're just protecting the innocent here. But I asked some teacher leaders to rate their schools on those 7 categories under the schema of implementations. I tried to get teacher leaders from different parts of the country, different, that I thought would have a good mix of schools. And so first of all, thank you, teacher leaders, who helped me out with that. This was great. I couldn't have done it without you, and we couldn't have had today's little video if we hadn't had your data. So as you can see, these are some of the counts of things that, if we look down here at this table, it's just showing how many, so of all the schools that I got data back on, this is just showing how many fell into each category, schema of implementation. So for example, 53 of the schools that teacher leaders responded on fell into the integration category, all the way down to 8 schools falling in the isolation category. And this is the number of students that was used in each of these samples here to do our calculations. Now, it's always worrying when you kind of get a small number, like down here, we only have 8 schools. We can see that actually kind of is similar to what they have over here in the I3 report. They took a sample of schools around, let's see, 17, 21, about 23 schools, and only 2 of them fell into that isolation category. So I think what this is telling us is, hope is what it's telling us is that, we don't have a lot of schools operating down here. The majority of our schools are operating up here in integration and endorsement. All right, so hey, let's actually take a look at some results. And so here I have a table, and we have one line for each schema of implementation. So we have our integration all the way down to isolation. And we're looking at a couple things. We're going to look at the percentage of kids that were successfully completed reading recovery. Those who discontinued is what I'm saying here. Some of my terminology, I've done this for more school administrators. We're also look at the percentage, the percentage of incomplete interventions. And then we're going to look at the effect size. So, how much are our children growing? And we're going to look at the effect size of kids who successfully completed reading recovery, comparison to the kids who were recommended. And then I have this final category over here. It's the effect size of students receiving some other literacy support other than reading recovery from a non-reading recovery teacher. So this child did not get reading recovery, and they are not working with a reading recovery teacher. All right, so let me jump back to the right side of the table here. And the first thing I kind of want to highlight is that, or look at, is, the percentage of kids who successfully completed reading recovery, those who discontinued. We can see as we move from top to bottom that percentage shrinks. We have our first little sort of almost, it's going to be about almost a 7%, a little more than a 7% jump. When we go from integration to an endorsement, it bumps back up a little bit in obstruction. I don't think that means that obstruction is better. We just, small sample size, I think we see a fluctuation in that. But then we see almost a 10% drop when we move down into that isolation category, that, we are only discontinuing about 57% of our kids in that isolation category at those schools that fall into that category. And then when we come over to incomplete interventions, we see kind of this trend where as we move from most integrated to least integrated, the percentage of kids that we discontinue, the percentage of kids that we are incomplete goes up. So, we have an initial little jump here, once again, from integration to an endorsement. Once again, there's a little drop here for this obstruction, but I think once again we have a small sample size here. But once we see this big jump, an almost 16% jump in the number of kids that are that are incomplete at the end of the school year, when we do get to this totally to the bottom here in this isolation mode. So in general, as reading recovery is less integrated or a part of sort of a whole school strategy, the more kids that are going to be incomplete in reading recovery. So I think initially, yeah, these numbers kind of what I think support our feelings about reading recovery, that, reading recovery is okay by itself, but it's certainly even better when it's part of a whole school strategy. Let me move over to our effect size. So I didn't want to report like the total score. I've used this chart in front of school administrators, and school administrators understand effect sizes. So in research, when we talk about effect sizes, anything with a 0.5 or higher is considered a large effect size. So I think you can see in our first 3 levels of schema of implementation, we've got reading recovery with more than with over a 1, at the most a 1.2 effect size. And that's normal. Reading recovery always had this huge effect size. And that we can see in our first sort of 3 categories here that, we do maintain a very, very large effect size, but we take a significant drop when a school is operating in that isolation. And reading recovery is just an island by itself. It's a 0.7. Now that's still large, but it's certainly not anywhere near the potential of what reading recovery can do. And I think what I wanted to point out here with the recommended children is not so much that it changes or anything, is that when we get into our isolation mode down here, that really teachers are only able to foster the same effect sizes on recommended kids with their discontinued kids as with their recommended kids. So we're just seeing some sort of loss in effectiveness when reading recovery is operating, by itself. And then finally, what I wanted to talk about is, I'm trying to develop this phrase, don't use reading recovery to drive to the mailbox. So, what I'm trying to say is that, when you bought your car, you didn't buy your car to just drive it to the mailbox, to the end of the driveway or back. Now, maybe if you're planning on retiring to Florida, that's normal, but most of us, and I know teacher leaders drive around a lot, we're using our cars for something else other than driving to the mailbox. And so what I've been trying to say to administrators is that, your reading recovery, your teachers can have an effect on your other teachers. I think that's what we feel. And so I think this data starts to show it a little bit. So once again, it's students, non-reading recovery students, receiving literacy support from a non-reading recovery teacher. And as we move from the least integrated to schools to the most integrated schools, that effect size goes up. Now, so a -1 effect size doesn't mean the child is making backward progress. It means that the effect size measures against what the average growth is. So they are making less than the average growth, and in this case, significantly less than the average growth. But I think what we begin to see here is that our reading recovery teachers have, some sort of effect, whether it's through knowledge sharing or something, on other teachers in the building and to the kids who are getting this other literacy support for other reading recovery teachers. So I think this is a great start. I call this an exploratory look because, the sample is certainly my sample was certainly, you know, I forget how many schools I had here. It's certainly a good start. You know what? There's 100 and I'm going to quickly, that's, you know, I probably got 100 and I'm just going to estimate, some of you are going to tell me I'm wrong, over 120 schools in my sample, over 1,000 kids in there. And that's a good start. I think it needs to be scaled up a little bit more. We need to be able to find more of these isolation and obstruction schools and try to get a good sample there and see if these bottom numbers still hold out in that category. But I think as you're talking to administrators and stuff, you know, wouldn't hesitate to show them this, that, you know, we have some data that's starting to back that up. And I plan to talk about this data at the Teacher Leader Institute on the whatever day I usually have my little earlier presentations, and it's going to be my Closing the Administrator Gap presentation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this part of I Love Data Fridays, and now we're going to move into our making our multi-year OS total score growth chart. So here we go. Let me get that screen up there. All right, so I think some of you probably remember a few weeks or last month we made this special OS total score growth chart, and I'm going to bring up an example here real quick. Where is it, Jeff? There it is. We did this little growth chart right here. Very nice. Looks very nice. And in this sample, it displays some interesting information about our reading recovery in our tested, not instructed students over 3 school years. Now, I am not going to go over, at least for the Excel part of this, how we find this data and why we're structuring it like this. That was in our previous video. What I'm going to show is how to do this chart in Excel 2010. So now, let me fire up Excel 2010 here real quick. There it is, Excel 2010. Stop my slides for a second. All right, and now let's bring in my sample. All right, so I have, for the sake of time, my data already set up in here, so we can just show you how to make the chart. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, so if we're in Excel 2010, I'm going to highlight all of my data. I am going to go to Insert, and we're going to start with our line chart, and we're going to go to this line chart right here, the one with the dots on it. All right, now you'll see that it doesn't actually put any lines, but we've got our little markers on there, and it's exactly what we want. Now, where the difference is from my last video is putting some of our dots on a secondary axis. The secondary axis being the right side, compared to having our numbers, having the scale of some of our dots be on the right side and not all on the left side. And this is how we get some of our, we're able to get the multiple colors on here. So I have to put our green triangles and our X's, our gray X's, on a secondary axis. And this is where it differs from the previous video I did in Excel 2013. So we're going to right click and we're going to format the data series. And I'm going to tell it to plot the series on the secondary axis. So it's done that. So I'm going to come up to my X's. I'm going to go to Format Data Series. Plot that on the secondary axis. There we go. Now, let's shrink that down a little bit so it fits on the screen. Now I'm going to put in my up-down bars. So I'm going to click on this blue diamond here, and we are going to do then our up-down. I'm going to go to Layout, up-down bars, click up-down bars. Then I'm going to go to my green triangle. Once again, to Layout, up-down bars, click my up-down bars. All right, we got the bars. Now I'm just going to color some things in. So I am going to right-click on this bar, and that's what I did. I just right-clicked on it, and I can do a shape fill. I'm going to fill that black, and I'm also going to tell it to do the outline in black. There we go. And then I am going to tell it to do a shape fill of gray and an outline of gray. There we go with those bars. Now we have to, I don't need this legend anymore, so I'm going to click on that. Click the delete, or tap the delete button. There we go. Now we got to remove the colors on these, so I am going to click on that. Let me close that again. I'm going to click on that, right click, format data series. Nope, wait a minute, I'm doing this the hard way. Right click on that, there we go. And I'm going to say no fill and no outline. I'm going to do it up here, right click. Now I can just click these buttons again, and that'll give me no fill and no outline. Click on that square. Right click, no fill, no outline, and on the X, and we will do no fill and no, oh, here we go, undo, there we go, try that one more time, right click, no fill, no outline, boom, all right, good. Now I just need to adjust the scale on my axes here. Both of them are going to be fixed, the maximum and minimum. I'm going to make this 350 and 570. Jeff, how did you know that? I just looked at my data and picked a range that my numbers would fit inside. So I just looked at my mins and maxes over here. What are my biggest and smallest values? We have to do it on both axes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cough real quick. I'm going to mute myself. All right, I'm done coughing. Make both of these fixed. 350 and 570. Close. There we go. And there we go. Oh, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on this axis over here, and I'm just going to hit the delete button. It's still there. It's still doing the axis, but we just don't want it shown. There we go. We've repeated it for Excel 2010, making that OS total score multi-year, multi-category chart. So there we go. That's Excel 2010 right there. All right, now let's repeat this, but now we're going to repeat it in Google Sheets. So I am going to bring over my Google Sheets tab. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that I couldn't figure out how to get a chart that looked exactly like this chart right here. I could not get a chart that had different colors for the different bars, and I could not get it to have down on the horizontal axis here, I could not get it to sort of group the categories by school year like this, and I tried for about an hour this week to do it. So what I'm going to show you today is just how I was able to kind of get it done and sort of get around some of the problems that I encountered, and it is what it is. And if someone finds out how to do it and the things that I couldn't figure out, awesome, email the help desk, let me know, and we will get it up there on I Love Data Fridays. So first thing we have to do is that we have to set up our data a little differently, and I have my cheat sheet here, so I'm just going to copy some pre-prepared data that I have. You'll notice, you know what, I don't even know if I'm going to compare the differences from the Excel to the Google Sheets. I think you just want to know how it gets done, so we're just going to get it done. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what you need to do. In column B, the cell B1, you just write the word fall. In cell D1, you're just going to write the word year end. All right? Now, down column A, you are going to put your reading recovery and your tested not instructed categories, and then in parentheses, we're just going to put an abbreviation for the school year. So I've got 3 years of data. I'm using 2 rows for each year, one for reading recovery, one for tested not instructed. All right, so I have 6 rows total here. All right, so that's how you're going to write that in. Then you're going to come in and you're going to put in all of your data for the fall for your different categories. And then you're going to repeat this data, the same exact data again in column C. Just copy and paste or retype it in exactly as it is. We need to do that because of the type of chart we're using, this candlestick chart. If we don't do it like that, our chart won't look right. So we just got to do it like that. Then you'll type in all of your year-end data in column D. All right, so your 14-15 data goes here, 15-16 data goes there, 16-17 data goes in these two cells right there. And then once again, you just type it in again in column E. All right, so there we go. All right, now I'm going to highlight all of this, and then I'm going to come up to the chart button. I'm going to click Insert Chart. By default, it's not going to give us the chart we want. All right, so we're going to come over to this chart type under the chart editor, and I'm going to move down to the candlestick chart. And there we go, our candlestick chart. I'm going to close this. And that was the best I was able to get it in Google Sheets. I was not, like I said, I can't get separate colors. Like I can't right click and get a separate color. It won't let me style it in any different way. I can't do any options over here to edit it to get a different color. It will not let me do it. So that's it right there. That is the Google Sheets chart that you can make with for the multi-year OS total score and also multiple student categories chart. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a break here and see if there's any questions from anybody. I'll open it up for questions if anyone's watching right now. So I'm going to pause and see if anyone writes in any questions. And you can do it in the Google chat, in the YouTube chat window. It's been a bit of a hectic week, and I've had some changes to my schedule, and I wasn't able to get set up a question and answer place on the Slido that I've been using in the last few I Love Data Fridays. So I'm going to hold on here. See if any questions roll in. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. We'll give it another 30 seconds, see if we have anyone just desperately trying to type a few things away here. If you wanted to get fancy with this chart and you want to add in a third category on the Google Sheets, let's see, what would you do? I think we could say insert above. Like if we wanted to add in the random sample, we could say random sample 14, 15, random sample 15-16, and then one more row, random sample 16-17. I'm just going to make up a few numbers here, so these aren't really random sample values. 380, let's just say 385, and this year they got a 391. Ooh, nice. All right, so, and then we can copy and paste these over there. Copy, paste. And you can see my chart's already starting to update itself. So it's added in space for these bars. We just got to get the bars in there. I'm going to say that our random samples finished at a 531 and a 534 and then a 532. And then once again, we repeat these over there. 532, 532. Well, that. So you can do that as well. Now this chart starts to get a little crazy if you do that. So, all right, I think I've stalled for enough time there. I'm not seeing any questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will say thank you once again for, let's get up my finishing screen here. I will say thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this I Love Data Fridays. And I'm going to do a special closing here. I wanted to play some more holiday music for you. So I enlisted the help of my kids to research what might be some good holiday music for for us to play in closing. And let me just say, I don't think the apple fell far from the tree when it came with music selection. And so my kids picked probably the strangest holiday music selection you could find. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say thank you once again for listening to I Love Data Fridays. We'll talk data to you later. I'm going to play this nice little holiday video going out here for you to listen to, and it has a little montage of all of the topics that we've had here on I Love Data Fridays, and we will talk data to you later. Oh, let me get that little thing out of the way. Try that again. All right, we'll talk data to you later.
Set a place at your table for a zombie. Fill a plate for your rotting fellow man. It's really tough to be undead, help them celebrate instead. At the holidays, it's good to lend a hand. It's a season full of joy and celebration, but for those who struggle with reanimation, it's not toys and dolls and trains, just the endless search for brains. There's nothing fun about zombification. So set a place at your table for a zombie. Fill a plate for your rotting fellow man. It's really tough to be undead, help them celebrate instead. At the holidays, it's good to lend a hand. You don't have to buy your zombie friend a present, but if you don't feed him something, he'll resent it. As long as what you serve is fresh, it doesn't have to be human flesh. Try a turkey or a brisket or some pheasant, and set a place at your table for a zombie. Fill a plate for your rotting fellow man. It's really tough to be undead, help them celebrate instead. At the holidays, it's good to lend a hand. Sing along, zombies! Very good, very good. Fill a plate for your rotting fellow man. It's really tough to be undead, help them celebrate instead. At the holidays, it's good to lend a hand.